Hello and welcome back to Tracking Trends. Today I do not have a guest with me. What I do have is a set of data that are rather interesting and intriguing and in some way worrying. The data relate to India's exports with its major trading partners. Over the past several months, we have been obsessed with what is happening to India-US trade. What we haven't been looking at, what is happening to India's exports with its major trading partners. There are some very concerning trends out there. Before we talk about those details, my request to all of you to subscribe to my channel, press the bell button so that you get notified every time we have a new show. Now, talking about the data on exports to major trading partners, we all know that the United States is India's most crucial trading partner. And why not? Every fifth dollar or one out of every $5 that India earns in exports comes from the United States. So it is quite natural that when things go wrong on that front, that all eyes will be set on that. Having said that, but there are still 80% of the export earnings that come from elsewhere. It is important for us to know what is happening because we live in an integrated world. What has been happening with US also has also been affecting other countries, and in turn it is affecting those countries' trade relations with us. It becomes evident when we look at the data. And here is what the data tells us. Here is what you won't have seen in newspaper headlines. You won't have seen in government statements that conceal more than they reveal, but it is important to take note of it. So what are you going to talk about? If you take India's top 20 trading partners, India's top 20 export destination, between April, August, the first 5 months of the current fiscal for which data is available, with as many as 10 countries, in other words, half of the top 20 trading destinations, India's exports have gone down year on year. India's exports, let alone grow, have contracted. And that's a serious concern. Now let's look at where and how. Sample this. Netherlands, the third most important export destination for India. Exports in the month of April to August, the first 5 months of the current fiscal, are down 18% year on year. Netherlands accounts for 5% of India's total exports. Next in the queue, United Kingdom. This is the fourth largest export destination, or rather fifth largest export destination for India. Exports are down almost 9% year on year. Take the case of Singapore. And Singapore is important because other than being a part of ASEAN and therefore with which we have a kind of a free trade agreement, Singapore is an important rerouting destination. Many of our exports leave the Indian shore, go to exports to be re-exported to other destinations, primarily US and Europe, and some to other East Asian countries. Singapore is down 13%. Another major trading partner, Saudi Arabia. All of you must be reading, you must be seeing how many times the Prime Minister and top officials have been going to the Gulf country to strengthen our ties. And yes, our trade relations have grown significantly in the past few years. But with Saudi Arabia, we see in the first 5 months, exports from India to Saudi Arabia are down nearly 13%. Now you would say if exports with all these major trading partners have contracted so much, how has India's exports, total exports in these first 5 months still grown by a meager, by some margin, which is about 2.5%. And this is where the irony lies. During April, August, despite all the concerns, all the panic that has been around, India's exports to United States have shot up by 18%. Now let's understand what has happened there. If you remember, when Trump started talking about the rhetoric around tariffs started in February, March, but it was in April Trump announced the reciprocal tariffs, but quickly he held on to that and he said, I'm going to give 90 days to everybody to come back with a counter offer, and if the offer is good enough for me, I would revisit the tariffs that I plan to impose, and until the 90-day deadline, I am putting these tariffs on hold. So effectively, between April to June, the new tariffs went on hold. And thereafter, as you know, or during that period, India and US started negotiating a trade deal. It was hoped initially that by August, we would be able to strike a trade deal, which is why another month went by without any reciprocal tariffs being imposed on India. But come August first week, out of nowhere, Trump shocks India by imposing first a 25% tariff and then a penalty of another 25% because India imports Russian oil, and therefore, in Trump's understanding, India has been supporting Russia in its war against Ukraine. But before that 50%, from April till first week of August, the old tariff rates continued, which is why Indian exporters started front loading many of their shipments. American importers, fearing that tariffs would go up, started advancing their imports. You would have read in the newspapers how Apple carried plane loads of iPhones to US, and the reason why, and smartphones, as you know, are a big part of India's exports today, and most of these smartphones are actually exports from Apple's factory here to the United States. Now, which is why in April, August, the first 5 months, you still see a 18% jump in exports to US. And because US is our largest trading partner, accounting for 20% of our exports, so this healthy growth in exports has been able to offset the contraction we have seen vis-a-vis other major trading partners. But take a closer look at what is now happening to exports to the US. If you see, if you take August's number alone, suddenly exports growths have slowed to 7.5% year on year. And this is, mind you, the first 10 days did not see the impact of the new tariffs. But if we compare month on month, India's exports to US have fallen sharply from $8 billion a month average between April to July to about 6.7%, or a decline of almost 16% in the month of August alone. Now we are in September, getting over. The full impact of these new tariff rates will be seen. In weeks from now, we will get to know what is happening. But one thing is for sure, that on the one hand, we are seeing our exports with our major trading partners contracting year and year, and on the other hand, what was saving us by way of higher exports to the United States will no longer hold, because as these tariffs, new tariffs of 50% come into play fully from September onward, we are going to see a decline in our exports to US. Perhaps it may not be too long before we see a year-on-year contraction in India's exports to US, unless the two countries are able to strike a deal. Now, In the beginning, when all these things started in April, we were told by our Commerce Minister that we would get to see a deal by August. Now, when that didn't work out, and after Trump imposed the tariffs, and we sought to open the channels again to negotiate the trade deal, the Commerce Minister said, well, a trade deal looks like it will take us till November. We don't know. He has come back from the United States. He's come back actually empty-handed. Not even empty-handed, it is worse. When he made a trip last week to United States, Donald Trump announced another set of measures which also hit us, our goods exports. 100% levy of tariffs on branded pharmaceuticals. Well, most of our pharmaceutical exports are in the realm of generics, but we do. Companies like Dr. Reddy's, Glenmark and several others, they do export certain branded products and there will be some impact. Now, that's the story of merchandise goods and trade, which really doesn't look good. On the one hand, we have negative growth with our major trading partners, and the other hand, we are staring at a contraction with our most important trading partner in the United States. The only area where our exports are probably showing some healthy growth are vis-a-vis China. But as you and I know, we don't export finished goods to China. There is no great value addition in what we export to China. There aren't enough employment generated in the goods because they are mostly raw materials, minerals. That's what we export to China. Now, what am I trying to explain? All that I am trying to say is that India's export story, which has been struggling to look up for the past several years, the news is going to be worse in the coming year. In a way, you could see perhaps India's export story is collapsing. Why am I saying India's export story is collapsing? It's not about just what is happening to our merchandise goods export. We have heard about what has happened to our H-1B visa fees. By announcing a 100,000 fee for H-1B visa, the United States President Donald Trump has effectively killed that program. And all of us know that Indian professionals were the biggest beneficiary of that program. Not only that, it aided many of our outsourcing companies, IT companies. It also brought us a major source of remittances. Now, we will talk about the impact, but it doesn't stop there. There is also something called a Hire Act that a Republican Senator, Bernie Moreno, has proposed. Our last video, we explained the implications of this act in detail. If this proposed act or proposed legislation becomes a law, it's going to have serious impact on India's services exports. So both on account of goods and on accounts of services exports, we are really getting cornered badly. India's export story is not just faltering, it is collapsing. And why should you be concerned? Why should we be concerned about it? It is because if we really want to grow fast, and grow fast we must, because if we want to pull millions of our people out of poverty, India's economy needs to grow at 7 to 8% a pace. And that requires you need to have a very healthy export story, because exports of goods and services taken together account for a fifth of our GDP. Now, when you have exports slowing down, not growing, or there is a fear that in this current fiscal, you may actually end up with a contraction in our exports. Should that happen, it really impacts the prospects of our GDP growth. The GDP growth, which initially we had projected to be around 6.5% or so, may not materialize. But there is worse. When we don't earn enough from exports, when we have a situation where foreign investors are pulling out of Indian market, which is what you have seen in the stock market has been rather in a bearish phase because foreign portfolio investors have been pulling their money out. They don't have so much of confidence in the Indian market today. To make it worse, a lot of Indian companies are now investing a lot more abroad than what the foreign companies are doing out here, which is why we now have had a year that has gone by where net foreign direct investment inflows have almost become zero. Whatever little bit of foreign investment we are getting, more than that, Indian companies are now investing abroad. Now, what does this mean? It means there are fewer dollars coming India's way. And if there are fewer dollars coming India's way, it means the rupee will continue to depreciate. Over the last 3 or 4 months, we have seen rupee has depreciated almost close to 10%. And when rupee depreciates, it stokes inflation. And when inflation grows, even the efforts that recently the Indian government has tried to do by reducing GST to boost demand, that gets nullified. Inflation would suppress demand, and thus inflation will hurt growth. So when the India's export story starts collapsing, the India growth story also starts hitting hurdles. It's time our policymakers wake up. It's time our government wakes up. It's time for experts to take a closer look at what is happening with our trading partners. The problems are specific to different trading countries, with different trading countries. The problems are specific to different industries and sectors. We cannot have an answer, we cannot have a one size fits all answer. We will have to have a disaggregated, multi-layered approach done with lots of rigor, with informed perspectives, and with a strategic outlook. In the coming episodes of Tracking Trends, we will get down to some of these issues. We will take up every major sector that is suffering. We will take up every major trading partner with which our exports are beginning to decelerate. We will take up all those FTAs, the free trade agreements that we have signed with countries, but we are not benefiting as much as they are probably benefiting from it. And why have we ended up in such a situation? What could be a way to course correct? All of those details we will now bring in experts in our coming episodes and dive deep into it. Stay with us, stay tuned, and if you have liked our episode, please subscribe to our channel, spread the word around, and keep coming back to us. Thank you very much.